Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Basler Communities Libraries program tonight. I'm Diana Weaver, Director of the library, and we're delighted to bring you a very special program tonight, Techniques and Tricks for the Beginning Birder with Chuck Otte. I've been a birder for a number of years, and I still feel like a beginner, so I'm looking forward to learning a few more tricks from one of the experts in our state. There are just a couple of things I want to let you know before we get started. First, tonight's program is being recorded and will be available on the library's YouTube channel, BCL Buzz. And if you have any questions for Chuck tonight, please put them in the chat box and we'll get to as many as we can after the presentation. So I'm delighted tonight to introduce Chuck Otte, who is a Geary County K-State Extension agent, author, and avid birder. Chuck has decades of experience birding around the state of Kansas. He grew up on a family farm in York County, Nebraska, and has received 2 degrees from the University of Nebraska. He has been employed by the Geary County Extension Office since February of 1982. Chuck has co-authored 2 books about Kansas birds, as well as several magazine articles about birds and birding. And he manages the immense database of the Kansas Bird Listserv, the go-to hub of information about birding in Kansas. Thank you for being with us tonight, Chuck.
It's a privilege to be here. Are you ready for me to start?
Yes, whenever you're ready.
All right, let's get this up and let's get it going. First of all, thank you to everyone that's showing up tonight. I know there were probably quite a few more people that registered, but I know there were conflicts. And the beauty of these things is they can be recorded and you can go back and watch them later if you do run into a conflict. See names of a lot of friends in the participants list, and good to have you with us tonight. I started birding when I was 4 years old. I've been birding for over 60 years. The past couple of years, especially the past 14, 15 months with the pandemic, has really changed a lot of the parameters, and we see a lot more people getting heavily into birding because it was something that they felt safe they could do. They could do it in their own yard, from their own backyard to a park. They could be away from people. Some people, I think, want the matrix example of plugging into the computer and instantly downloading knowledge. And unfortunately, that just doesn't happen. It takes time and years to do this. I've been leading bird walks for a long time, spend time talking with other birders, presenting programs like this. And I find that we keep falling in, as humans, falling into certain traps, whether we're bird watchers, whether we're looking at wildflowers, butterflies, dragon, just about anything. So I think a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight applies to virtually any nature or natural observations that you do. There's a lot of things that we can pick up. And if we understand why as humans we're the way we are, I think it helps us break down some of the barriers that we run into. So feel free to put your questions in there. I wish I was there face-to-face with you all. It does make it a lot more fun, but we're going to get going here and have a lot of fun. Hopefully, if I come on, but there we go. We all started as beginning birders. Some of us started very young. Some started as mature individuals. I've got good friends. He was another county extension agent that when he and his wife retired, they decided they were going to start bird watching. And they keep a list together. They only keep track of the birds that they both get to see. That's great. I don't do that with my wife, who is also a bird watcher. If she doesn't do it, too bad, man. I'm going to write that bird down on my list. So we've all goofed on bird IDs. Western meadowlark or meadowlarks are a very common bird. I've turned them into 15 different species over the years. So it happens. It's okay to make mistakes. Consider them learning opportunities. Now, in today's social media world, there's a Facebook page called Kansas Birding, and they've got over 7,000 people on it. And sometimes people think they've identified a bird, they get corrected, and they get really defensive. Nah, it's part of the process. We're all going to make mistakes. Birding is one of those areas where hobby and science tend to collide like two fists. And both sides of it are very valued and valuable. So it's part of the process. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Everybody is going to have challenges when it comes to bird watching. I have some friends that are very hearing impaired. and they're outstanding birders. And I have such admiration for them because I depend so much on my ears, and as I get older, my wife's ears, to help lead us to the birds. So we're all going to have challenges. The challenges depend on where you live. Depends on the time of the year. Right now, springtime, all these males are in their bright, showy plumage. That makes it fun. That makes it easy. The fall of the year, we got immatures, we've got birds that are transitioning, and it can get really muddled. It also depends on how involved you want to get in the hobby or the science. You can go all in, like myself and 25 other people I can name in a heartbeat. You can focus only on the birds in your backyard, and you can call it a wild canary instead of an American goldfinch. You can call it a redbird instead of a northern cardinal. I don't care. If it's bringing you joy, that's the most important thing. Nature is out there and it gives us so much enjoyment. You can be anywhere in between on that. And what I have found is it tends to be a slippery slope. The longer you're into it, you just kind of keep getting sucked in deeper and deeper and deeper. My mother was a bird watcher. I held an older brother that was a bird watcher. And I can describe very specific instances in my life that I just kind of went further down the slope into all in on bird watching. And that's okay. It's great. As I've worked on these programs over the years, I've come across a series of challenges or things that tend to mess us up when we're trying to identify birds. And lo and behold, Maeve Kim, who is a wonderful author and bird watcher back in either Vermont or New Hampshire, had a December 2018 Bird Watching magazine issue article called Birding ID Curveballs. And she narrowed everything down to some of the same things that I've always talked about, but she did it far more concise than I did. So I kind of borrowed them and put them at the start, and I'm going to get back at the very end to some of the suggestions that she has. She narrows them down to distance, weather, poor light or just light, movement, meaning the motion of the bird, impediments, and contortions. And it just, man, I hope to meet her someday. I just love her writing, and I've seen some of her recordings from Zooms before. So first thing I want to say is learn the common species well. Most of us probably see a robin and know immediately that it's a robin. But why? Let's take some time to go through. It's got that white flash under the tail. It's got that orangish breast. It's one of those things we don't even have to think about it. We see it, we know it's a robin. So then we go on to something else, but do we really spend time with it? On the right, lower right, there's a bunch of house sparrows, adult males, adult females. I get a lot of pictures or see a lot of photos of 3 different species that cause confusion among birders. House sparrow, especially female house sparrows, female cowbirds, and female red-winged blackbirds. Fairly common species. Learn them. Because a lot of what we're going to see are the common birds. And once you learn those common birds, you can say, okay, that's that, okay, that's different. What is that? I want to focus on that. So it's very important to learn the common species. It also can help you prevent the confusion that has quite often come with me and the meadowlarks of the uncommon presentation of a common species. This bird in the picture here was taken from a reservoir in central Kansas in December. And you're saying, well, it's a headless something or another. Well, the head is actually there. It's just bent over preening. And yet, knowing that it's in central Kansas in December, that's all we need to know that that is a first winter ring-billed gull. But that's why you take time learning these things. Ring-billed gull, along with Franklin's gull and the herring gull, are the most common gulls in the state. And yet they can cause us a lot of problems. Part of it is because they're monochromatic, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. They're just kind of boring. Warblers are exciting. They've got bright colors. Orioles are exciting. They've got bright colors. Warblers, shorebirds, sparrows, and gulls are boring. So study the common birds to avoid falling into the trap of turning them into something rare. Vocalizations. They're so very, very critical. It's just before I came on tonight, I looked out the window. I'm on the second floor of our farmhouse, and my wife had moved her patio chair out where she's watching the hummingbird feeder, the oriole feeders, and all the activity that's going on around. We had some good south winds on Saturday. A lot of migrants moved through. The wind switched to the north with a vengeance on Saturday night. And migration is stalled out. So birds are around, they're active, they're talking to us, and the vocalizations can help you locate where they are. A lot of people talk about, I can't learn songs. I don't know how to do that. And yet a song comes on a radio that's 35 years old and they would sing it word for word. So we can learn songs. We just have to listen to them over and over and over again. Set a goal to learn 2 or 3 songs every year and then write those down and then review them next spring. So you can, okay, that's what that looks like. That's what a common yellowthroat sounds like. That's what an indigo bunting sounds like. And then use that. And the ears, I say we do a lot of bird watching with our ears. So the ears will lead you to the birds. Find a song you don't recognize and chase it down. Recognize that bird vocalizations change from day to day with the weather and with the time of the year. This time of year, we've got a lot of birds singing their territory defending song. They're trying to defend territory. They're trying to attract a mate. So they've got their classic songs. With warmer temperatures, sunshine, lower wind speeds, earlier in the morning, we're going to get a lot more birds singing. As temperatures go down or get higher this time of year, later in the day, or it's cloudy or it's windy weather, we hear far fewer vocalizations. Sometimes they just aren't singing. Sometimes they're singing, but because of the ever-present Kansas wind, we simply can't hear them. So sometimes you have to adjust your bird watching to the weather that's around you. Eastern meadowlark and western meadowlark, the 2 birds of Kansas. We could spend a half hour trying to discuss the differences here and which one's the eastern or which one's the western. Honestly, out in the field, if they don't sing, I mark them down as a meadowlark, period. I don't get torn up about it. Now, in this case, I can tell you the bird on the left is the western, the bird on the east is and the bird on the right is the eastern, because I set it up like it was a road map. The west is on the left, east is on the right. That's the only way I could have kept it straightforward. But I've spent a lot of time with birders that are better than me that think they've got it pegged, and the bird opens its mouth and they're wrong. So I just say, you know, if you're not going to talk, I'm not going to register what you are. And especially where I am here in central Kansas, it's a twilight zone. We've got a lot of both of them. As you get further east towards the eastern edge of the state, you're going to have a predominance of eastern meadowlarks, but there's still westerns out there. Just got to listen for them. Study your songs. You know, when I first started bird watching, we would get LP records and they had snippets of song, maybe 30 seconds of one. And oh my gosh, I'd listen to those records until I wore them out. And then we got cassette tapes, and then we got CDs, and now we had MP3s, and now we've got apps for our smartphones that has so many songs on them. It's just almost overwhelming. Originally, these older recordings, they just put on the most common song because that's all they had room for. The other problem is that those full breeding songs, those songs that we're hearing right now, we may not hear in August, September, October when the birds are heading back south. So that may be a little bit different. They've got chip notes, they've got vocalizations. Cardinals, a very common bird, have an amazing number of vocalizations amongst a pair, between one of the adults and young in the nest. It's just absolutely fascinating to just sit around and listen to them sometimes. Smartphone apps are very helpful, but they have created sometimes a bit of a problem in that knowing that adult male birds, especially this time of year, will respond to their own song to defend or try to run the interloper out. People will sometimes play them excessively at very loud volumes to try to get a response. So they can get the bird where they can see it, whether they're photographing it or whatever. We're still trying to figure out. We suspect that excessive playing of songs can cause agitation. We know it causes agitation, can cause birds to abandon nesting territories or maybe even nest with young in them. So, you know, keep the volume low, listen to it just enough so you can identify that, yep, that was a hooded warbler I just heard. I wish. And that way you can do this without causing a problem, or listen to them at home, listen to them in the car where you're not going to be causing any interaction, but use with caution, use with consideration. I watched 2 birders on either side of a large grove of trees one time playing barred owl calls, and each one thought they had a barred owl responding, but it was just the 2 birders responding to each other. So, you know, just be considerate when I'm leading a bird walk. And if I'm going to play a song, I go, okay, I'm playing a pileated woodpecker now. Just hang on, so that nobody gets excited or confused. Birds react to the weather just like we do. If it gets cold, if it gets bad weather, we come inside. Birds take shelter wherever they can. bird the weather. Know where birds are going to be when it's calm or when it's windy, when it's cold, when it's hot. Especially in the wintertime, I say follow the food, follow the sunlight, for crying out loud. If it's a cloudy, cold morning in December 22nd and I'm on a Christmas bird count, the birds aren't going to be very noisy. But boy, find someplace out of the wind with food and the sun comes out for 30 minutes and it just explodes in bird calls. So know what their food sources are, know where they're going to be in different weathers. Learn the preferred habitats. Most breeding species have very specific vegetative needs or wants. Curve-billed thrashers are going to go to cholla cactus every chance they get. I keep saying we got to plant cholla cactus here to get curve-billed thrashers up here. It's a little bit more than that. Warbling vireos are going to go to cottonwood trees. Their preferred tree to nest in. Baltimore Orioles love elms. They love cottonwoods because they have these big, long arching branches and they can build those pendulous nests under. So, you know, just start to learn. Well, I'm always seeing a warbling vireo or hearing a warbling vireo around cottonwood groves. Helps you track them down. Now, the caveat to that is it's migration. When they are in flight, when they aren't grounded like they are now, most of the songbirds are going to travel at night. Sunlight comes up or the weather changes, they stop where they are. And you may find birds where you would not expect them. You'll find marsh birds in your backyards. If you remember last year in late October, we had this snowstorm and cold weather and thunderstorms in southern Kansas. And over 40 people photographed and recorded American woodcocks, a bird that's normally in wet meadows, in their backyards, grounded because of the snow. So when the weather changes, things like this come up, anything goes. Just be prepared for it. Okay, well, that's kind of weird. Why is that bird here? So it can happen. Same thing happens in July, August, September, when there are hurricanes down in the Gulf Coast, especially coming on shore in Louisiana or Texas. That can send birds north away from them. They get caught up in those winds and they just go. And that's where we're going to see magnificent frigate birds and possibly wood storks and roseate spoonbills that wind up in Kansas, just because they get up, they know the weather's changing and the wind pushes them up here. So it makes it fun. I was at a side note here. I was at a meeting in Philadelphia, 15 years ago. And it was in April. And I was the last plane to get into Philadelphia airport before everything got grounded because of this nor'easter. And I was going outside of the hotel about every hour, right along the river there, you know, in the wind, in the rain, looking for seabirds or gulls that had been blown inland. People thought I was crazy, but they just didn't get it. Your limits. Everybody has limits. Your equipment has limits. I don't care if it's, you know, binoculars, spotting scope, camera, you're going to have that challenge. I can look out the window here and see Milford Lake. Milford Lake, there are parts of Milford Lake where you cannot get closer than a half mile to the center of the lake. Guess where the ducks always go? The center of the lake, where they're a half mile away. If it happens to be 70, 80 degrees and there's a duck out there or a bird of any kind and the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour, I don't care if you've got a $5,000 spotting scope on a $1,000 tripod, you're going to have so many heat waves and so much vibration, you're not going to get a clear focus on it. Just say, okay, enough's enough. Too many birders think they have to identify every single bird. It's okay to say, don't know, just going to walk away from that. Time's too short, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So just understand there's limits to you and your equipment. So as I think about this, and I've talked with other birders over the years, the question came up, what's our biggest impediment to correct bird identification? What is the thing that invariably gets in our way? The human eye. The human eye is absolutely amazing. That's long enough to look at my eye. Eyes are powerful organs. They are amazing organs. They're very egotistical organs. They have the ability to see millions of hues and tints of color. It's just the subtle shades that we can pick out. And so because of that, the eyes are very egotistical and they just start to, you know, we're a very visually oriented society. And very conveniently because of what we can do with it. But if you think about how many times you've started to try to identify a bird, or maybe somebody has tried to identify a bird to you, how does it invariably start? With the color. Well, is red kind of like, well, not like a robin breast red, not really like a cardinal red, those two birds they know. And then it goes from there. Usually goes downhill from there, but it goes from there. Learn to look at patterns, light and dark patterns. I mentioned earlier, birders love warblers. Right now, we are in the middle of Christmas for birders because the warblers are coming through. They're brightly colored. And a lot of birders don't like sparrows and shorebirds and gulls because they're shades of brown or grays or whites mixed in with all those. It's just they're not striking. Sparrows and shorebirds are subtle like the prairie. Warblers are like the mountain. They'll slap you in the face to get your attention. But we've got to learn to look beyond just the color. Yeah, color overwhelms everything. My wife and I love to take our camping chairs, if you will, out this time of year. And if it's a nice calm morning, we'll get someplace and we'll set up our chairs, we'll sit down and we'll close our eyes and we listen. Because the minute you close your eyes are no longer in charge. And all of a sudden you hear things better. You're not distracted by, what was that? What, I just saw something move. What was, and then the ears shut down. So it helps us see things. But remember that when somebody's talking to you, they're going to talk about color. It's invariably. The other thing is everyone sees color differently. My wife and I just sold the house in town where we lived for 33 years. So we spent, time repainting the inside, of course. And if you want to understand how people see color differently, get her and I together, and she's basically a background as an artist, even though she's a birder, and get 100 paint chips out in front of you, various shades of gray, and listen to the argument. Oh, that one's got more gray in it. No, that one's got more blue in it. No, it does not have more blue in it. It's more gray in it. Everybody views things differently. The other thing is you pick up your bird book, and I don't have a bird book around me here. You pick up a bird book and you look at it, and printing processes aren't perfect. And there may be a run that gets the colors off just a little bit. Or you may be looking on your phone and maybe something's off a little bit. Somebody maybe had the vivid mode on in their camera when they took the picture, and that tends to mess up the colors a little bit. So then we've got to throw in the other wild card is birds are not carbon copies of each other. There are subtle differences. If you spent very much time watching house finches at your feeders, you'll know that some are almost orange, some are yellow. There's just this broad range of colors of them. Most of them are pretty much, there's this average going in there, but there's just a lot of variation. And because we get so focused on the bird, especially the color of the bird, we forget to look at the entire bird. I half jokingly, but very seriously say, take it to holistic bird identification. I've had birders send me photos of birds and they have it not correctly identified because they keep focusing on one field mark. I call it single field mark paralysis. And that may be color. It may be the color of the legs. It may be something else. But see the whole bird. How does the bird look? What's its silhouette? Where is it? What's the habitat? How is it behaving? What is it eating? Is it hanging around with other birds? Is it quiet or is it vocalizing? Now I say beaks, 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 but I'm actually talking about any non-feathered area. The feathers on birds are amazing. There's just no end to it. But we forget to look, what's the color of the beak? Not all beaks are the same. Some birds, like the American tree sparrow, the upper beak and the lower beak are different colored. Good way to help figure it out. What are the color of the legs? What are the color of the skin around the eyes? I see somebody waiting to come in here that's actually a dear friend of mine that lives in Ohio. So let's get Amy in here pretty quick there if we can, Diana. Use every clue you have available. You're a detective now. You're sleuthing. You're trying to figure out what this bird is. Don't limit yourself on what you can do. There's so many resources out there. You use a checklist for the birds in your county, your area, to say, well, that bird's never been here before. Doesn't mean it couldn't be here before, but it could be a rarity if it is. So yeah, use everything you have available to you. I like to play a game called Bird Identification in Black and White because we are so color oriented. In 1934, Roger Torrey Peterson released a field guide called Birds of Eastern North America, Eastern United States, no, it's North America. And it was revolutionary. It was groundbreaking because he all of a sudden took the science of ornithology, which was literally birds that had been shot and you're holding them in the hand and you're measuring things to figure out what the bird is, to identifying a living, breathing bird in the wild. When that book came out, that was the page. That was one of the pages. It was state of the art, groundbreaking, absolutely groundbreaking. Between the illustrations and what he had written in the text, I mean, every bird on here you could identify simply from the pictures that are there. So can you identify in black and white? And that's one of the things that I always tell people: get past the color. Look at the patterns on these birds. Look at the golden crowned kinglet. Look at the red-breasted versus the white-breasted nuthatch, the black-capped chickadee. You know, lots of little patterns that will help you understand. The other thing is that we have two sets of photoreceptors, if you will, in the back of in our retinas. We have rods and cones. Rods can operate under very low light intensity, but they're only on black and white, shades of gray. The cones need a lot brighter intensity, but that's what allows us to see color. Under limited light, as the light goes down, as it's getting darker out here, sunset will be in about another hour out here in Geary County. As the sun goes down, as it gets darker, the colors fade, they grow dim, and then pretty soon you're down to light and dark and shades of gray. What happens then is, in early morning and late evening, and we've seen these beautiful sunsets with oranges and pinks and blues and all these different hues, that can cause the color of the birds to change, especially on white parts. You get evening, a bird that's got a lot of white on the belly flying over water can take on the color of the water. So it just, all these little things start messing with us and giving us all sorts of challenges. The age-old question of, is it a purple finch or a house finch? And what do people invariably do? They start trying to match up colors to it, to the bird book. Well, is it more red, or is it more purplish pink, or just what is it? Take a picture of it and turn it to black and white. And all of a sudden, and I'll go ahead to the color. Here's the color version. And immediately we're focused right up here on the head and the color and the shades in there. We go back to black and white, and we can start to notice that we've got this light and dark pattern here. We've got these streaks down the side that just are pretty diffuse. They're not really distinct. When it's in color, we ignore that. That is a purple finch because it does not have very strong streaking down here. A male house finch is going to have very strong streaking here. And by the way, it will be primarily brown streaks, not these, whatever shade of red that is. I won't even try to guess. My wife is a quilter, and she talks about being at quilting retreats, and they will take pictures of quilts and then on their camera change it to black and white so that they can see the pattern better. They don't get distracted by the colors, and they can see the blocks and everything else in the quilt better. And she saw this program one time, and she said, we do that in quilting all the time. I never thought about doing it with birds. Get out of our color mindset. Sometimes it's helpful or almost necessary to try to determine sex and age. This time of year, it's pretty easy. You've got primarily adults. You've got some birds that are still transitioning from immature plumage to adult plumage. You see some really funny looking summer tanagers and indigo buntings. We have sexual dimorphism, where the male and female do not have the same plumage. They look differently. American goldfinch is one case of that. The males and females are different. Robins, blue jays, yeah, they're going to look pretty similar between the sexes. Then as you go through the books, you'll see immature versus juvenile. And then we've got birds that have multi-year development. Bald eagle is a classic case. Does not get the white head, white tail, dark everywhere else until it's 4, sometimes 5 years of age. So we've got to try to work on that. Then we have basic versus alternate plumage. Basic is I like to say, is the winter plumage. Alternate is breeding or summer plumage. Some birds don't change very much. Summer tanagers, once they become a full adult, their second summer, they're going to be red all the time. The males are going to be red all the time. Scarlet tanagers are red with black wings for a very short period of time. And then that red becomes this weird greenish yellow color thing. So it can be very, very confusing sometimes. The other thing is that in every field guide, and I'm still a big believer in printed books. There's anywhere from 20 to 50 pages of writing and helpful hints before you get to the pictures or illustrations of the birds. Take the time to read that. I honestly didn't start reading those until about 20 years ago, and it was like, wow, I didn't know all this stuff was in here. Lots of good things to help us understand what the pictures mean. So take the time to sit down when it's raining, when it's winter, when it's nighttime. Take the time to read that 2 or 3 times. The other reason I love bird books is you've got multiple species on a page when you open it up. And you can look at it, and they're often looking very similar, and you can start to look for differences. When I was that 4-year-old boy on the farm in Nebraska, going out taking meals and food to my father, my mother always had her bird book and binoculars along. And binoculars were as big as me, and I just start flipping through and trying to match pictures. A lot of us still do it that way. What the heck is that thing? But you can look at so many species at once. It's so very, very helpful when you can do that. In World War II, airplanes were suddenly a very important part of the war effort. So soldiers were taught general impressions of shape and size to try to identify friendly planes from enemy planes. As birders, we tend to do this also. And we get to the point to where, as we're driving down the road, you can tell in a heartbeat when that bird flies down from the wire, that was not a house sparrow, it was probably an eastern bluebird. So there's just different things you can learn to look at. So keep in mind, though, that a bird by itself is very challenging. It's very hard to know the size of a bird, unless, say, it's sitting on top of a fence and we know that the fence board is 6 inches wide and it's shorter than that. Yeah, if somebody sends me a description of a bird that says, well, the bird was 6.5 inches long, you don't know that. You looked at that out of the field guide, out of the bird book. Give it relation to some other bird that it was with, if that happens. The color of the bird can also make a difference. If you have a light bird and a dark bird that are literally the same size together at any kind of distance, the dark bird will always seem larger. It's just the tricks our eyes play on us. The other thing with certain species, especially gulls, is that immature birds are often slightly larger than the adults. They slim down a little bit. I guess they have baby fat or something, but yeah, just that's why can be hard to say, well, is it this size or this size? If it's by itself, you could be in trouble. And then start focusing on other things. How does the bird fly? Think about how you see woodpeckers fly, kind of flap, 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 soar, flap, 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 soar. Crows skipped school on the day they taught birds how to soar. Ravens stayed in, and ravens know how to soar. Crows don't. We'll sometimes see this bird flying away from us, and all you're seeing is just the silhouette, the inline view. And it's like, is that a hawk that's further away, or crow that's closer together? Well, it hasn't stopped flapping yet, so it must be a crow. Yeah, learn little things like that. The silhouette. There's several books out there that will show silhouettes of birds. The old Peterson guides, the front cover and the back cover inside, were simply silhouettes of birds. And you can learn so much from that silhouette. What are the light and dark patterns under low light? How much do we know about the bird? I mean, we don't need to know its first name or anything like that, but birds have separate habitat, feeding habits, food preferences. I say that birds, if you've got kids or grandkids, birds can be a valuable learning tool. Well, where does this bird spend its winter? Let's get the map out. See, it flies clear down here to Venezuela. That's in South America. How far do you think that is? Yeah, there's just so many things that can play into education of kids. And of course, I was doing it all the time because I was a bird nerd, but that's beside the point. But it just really is great opportunities. Little things like, have you ever thought about phoebes and peewees? Both of these are small brown flycatchers, about 6 inches long. They both eat insects. They're bug eaters. Phoebes return in March. Most of the phoebes are back by the 31st of March. Peewees are just now getting back here. So why do phoebes get back so much earlier, and how can they survive through an April snow and things like that? I'll give you a hint on that. Peewees are aerial specialists. They catch birds, they catch insects in flight. Phoebes will do that, but if there aren't birds in flight, they'll start going along and looking for insects that are hiding in bark. They'll start gleaning off the leaves. It gets cold, the insects get inactive, they try to find some place to hide, phoebes go after them. find out where they go for the migrants. And honestly, there are some species we still don't know. We just learned within the past 10, 15 years that the black swifts of the western mountains go down and winter in the rainforests of the Amazon. We never knew that. They finally figured out a way to put these tiny little trackers on them, and they were able to figure it out that way when they were able to recapture them. And again, use every clue you have available to understand that bird better. Quick few slides on photography. Cameras have changed so much in the past 20 years, the past 10 years. Digital photography has just exploded and exploded our knowledge of birds. You can get a digital camera with a 200 to 600 millimeter lens, an amazing resolution, and a shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. You can shoot a burst of 20 to 40 frames as this bird is coming into land, and suddenly we have crystal clear photos of what birds and their feathers and their wings and their tail are doing in flight and as they come into land. Amazing things we have learned. Documentation of rarities. Cameras have limitations. They can stop action incredibly, things that are blur to us, hummingbird wings. Cameras can stop. They have their limitations. Breadth and depth of vision is one. If you think about your eyes, and you ever do the stunt where you see how far back you can get your hands before they disappear, peripheral vision. As you're out in the trees and the timber and the prairie looking around, you can see things moving all over the place. And then something catches your eye, you put the binoculars on it. All of a sudden you've brought down your region of focus. The minute you pick up the camera, you bring it down even closer. So all of a sudden you're missing things. And then I've taken thousands of photos in my life also. So I know how it is. You're so busy trying to get the shot, you become oblivious to what is around you. People send me photos and it's not a great photo of a bird. And I say, well, did it vocalize? I don't remember. I said, how did it act? Was it leaf gleaning? Was it fly? I didn't notice. They're so focused on the shot, they didn't notice anything else about it. I've got a good friend in Manhattan, Dave. Dave's an amazing photographer. He was on the Christmas bird count in Manhattan a couple of years ago, and he knew there was this red-shouldered hawk hanging around. And he wanted to get a picture of it just for documentation. And he came around the corner, and here it was, and it flew away. And the red striping, the markings on the tail, even a little bit of the wing up in here, we can see that is clearly a red-shouldered hawk. Very excited. When he got home that evening, put it up on the computer, he suddenly realized there was a bird in the picture that he had totally missed at the time. And at the bottom of the picture, there was this bird, a Wilson snipe. Dave did not see any other Wilson snipes that day. And if he had not taken the picture, he would have noticed it. But if he didn't take the picture, maybe he would have seen it because he would have seen the motion down below him. So just a classic example. I said, Dave, can I please use this? I mean, he was making fun of himself, but it was just one of those things that he was so focused up here, he missed what was down here. If you take photographs, and that's fine, I take photographs. I mean, I was on the coast of North Carolina last fall and spent 2 weeks, and every low tide I was out with my camera or my spotting scope at the same sandbar, getting pictures of all sorts of wonderful coastal birds. And then in the evening, I'd sit down with them and I'd blow them up on my iPad and I'd start studying them. They are great educational tools, and they have taught us so much. Don't just, okay, this is a Caspian tern, label the file, put it there, check mark it. Don't do that. Sit down and really study the picture. All the features, feather by feather. Look at the hard parts. Look at the skin around the eyes. Even look at the eyes. I love birds that have like yellow eyes. They look obsessed. It's like common grackles just have this crazed look in their face. I just absolutely love it. This is a red-winged blackbird, a female red-winged blackbird, one of our struggling birds that people get to us. Look at the details on that. I mean, you can literally see every single feather. And when you start to see individual feathers, then suddenly you start to understand the composite picture of that bird. The thing that started jumping out at me several years ago on these digital photographs of a lot of the songbirds was their feet. Look at, you can call them toenails, you can call them claws, you can call them whatever you want to. But down here, look at how long those are. They are as long as that part of the toe itself. And suddenly you start to understand how some of these birds can land on a piece of vegetation or something and not fall off and not blow off. Absolutely amazing. A friend sent me pictures of a bobolink sitting on a barbed wire, and quite literally the claws, the talons came all the way around and overlapped each other. It was just, one of those, oh wow moments. It really was. However, sometimes I say don't focus on the details, but don't miss the details either. We were vacationing a couple of years ago, driving the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina and Virginia. We spent the night with our friends at a little motel, and we were out on the little patio having breakfast, and there was a hummingbird feeder there. My wife says, "Is there any nectar in that hummingbird?" Because the hummingbird just kind of came up, looked, and left. And I went and I walked around it, and I said, "No, there isn't." And then I saw this feather sitting on the perch. That's my thumb. And how she was able to get that sharp of a photo with her cell phone, I will never know. But we were kind of looking at it. A gust of wind came, and it was gone. And yet it's just, to see that, it's probably a breast feather. And you see little details that you never understand. You can see the downy parts back in here that the bird uses for insulation when it's a daylight today, and you're going, how do those poor things stay alive? And then the metallic coloration here that is down here in the breast someplace, more than likely. It's just, birds are just absolutely amazing. Okay, when Maeve Kim did this, she came back with kind of, how do we deal with this? And these are her words, not mine. But I agree with every single one of them. Know what common birds look like. Learn bird behavior. Bird the habitat. Bird with locals. We're starting to open back up, and we're more of us are getting vaccinations, and we're starting to have more and more bird walks coming up again. And there's bird walks around. Burroughs Audubon has them all around the Kansas City area. Bird with ears and eyes, and I put ears first intentionally on that. Take notes. Taking notes is like a lost art, it seems like. Talk aloud to yourself and slow down. Talking aloud to yourself says, okay, what's it speak like? What's its head like? You're looking through the binoculars. If there's anybody around you, they'll probably think you're crazy, but what are the patterns? What am I seeing? Are there wing bars? What are the leg colors? How is the tail longer than the body? Just everything you can think. Try sketching the bird. I am a horrible artist, but there are times when I've had a bird and I just make a quick sketch and put some notes by to help me remember certain things about it. Maves talks about try birding with your camera. I know people that go out with just their camera. I don't like that. It's not my style, but if it works for them, great. Go birding a lot. And I think that's part of this. You get to a point to where your eyes and ears are always open. My closing thoughts. Birding is a wonderful way to explore the natural world. Birds are literally everywhere. I don't care if you're in downtown Kansas City, it may be starlings, house sparrows, and pigeons, but there's birds around. Literally everywhere you go, you will encounter birds. It's a great time of fellowship, getting together with other birders. And a lot of these birders, they love more than just the birds. They like the dragonflies. They like the native grasses, the wildflowers, just the world around them. Beware of the internet expert. I'm on lots of different Facebook pages. I'm on one, I'm a garlic grower, and I'm a page with like 6,000 other garlic growers. And the misinformation just leaves me shaking my head. I could retire tomorrow and spend all my time on that page straightening out mistakes. Hang with those experienced locals. Find the people in your area that you go birding with that you can depend on, that you can say, send them a photo or just ask them a question and not be, oh, geez, they're going to think I'm an absolute idiot. If you aren't sure, I'll have my email address up here soon. Email me. I'm more than, I had 3 different photos since Monday come in at my work email. People want to know what this bird was. So I don't mind at all. If you're just starting, get an eBird account. eBird is through Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it's a database. It's data keeping where you can keep track of what you've seen and where. It's a great way to see what other people are seeing. And if you enter something that's really off the wall, there are reviewers that'll say, you want to give me a few more details on this bird? It may be exactly what you thought it was, and a lot of other people are going to want to see it. Or you may have made the mistake of, it's an immature male orchard oriole. It's not a hooded oriole. Then I've got in here, blaze your own trail. I've seen a phenomenon in the past 10 years with eBird where people go to these eBird hotspots, they get the reports, they see what other people are seeing at a certain location, maybe Antioch Park, and they go there to look for the birds that they saw listed. Go to good habitat and just see what you can find. Sometimes it's great to bird with other people. Sometimes it's better to bird with one or two people, whatever you're comfortable with. And then my closing thought, ABB, always be birding. I've spent 39 years working as a county agent. I get to work with a lot of farmers and ranchers. And it wasn't very many years into the job that people figured out that I was a bird watcher, and I'd be out talking with them on the edge of their wheat field. And all of a sudden I'd be looking someplace else. And I remember good old George Poland saying, "What'd you see this time, Chuck?" You know, they got used to it. They understood it. Family will learn to accept that you're a bird watcher. It's okay. Now we're going to get to the questions. Let me pull up this last one. That's my, that's how you can get a hold of me. And literally send me questions, send me bird photos, whatever it takes. I'm here to help you, and I really do want to help you. I will make this slide set available to Diana, and she may put, I can do it as a PDF, probably an Acrobat PDF, and she can put it up on their website or something so you can get access to it again. So I should have said that at the beginning. I'm sorry if you've been busy scribbling notes. That's my bad. So I'll leave that there for about another 10 seconds, and I will stop sharing, and we will get into questions. I talked about 5 minutes longer than I planned on, but that's not uncommon for me. I wander off in the weeds on a regular basis. So, okay. Diana, I'll let you take control. And
okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And just a reminder that this is being recorded and it'll be available on the library's BCL Buzz YouTube channel. So, and then if Chuck, if you would send us those slides, we'll be sure and put them up on our website. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. I love the idea. Just go out and enjoy it, and don't worry so much about identifying and things like that, but just enjoy what you're seeing and hearing. Well, if any of you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I did get one question from the registrations. Someone asked, there's a number of people who've experienced groups of 3 to 10 Baltimore Orioles this year. Any idea why this is happening?
We see this somewhere around the state every year. When Orioles with a lot of songbirds migrate, they just come, it's a wave moving north. And the weather turns like it did Saturday night, just boom, that cold front comes through, those storms, when they finally clear out, it's cold, it's a north wind. Migration is very energy intensive. They're not going to waste any more energy than they have to. So they're fueling up right now. They're waiting. They know the weather's going to turn around to the south. There was one time my wife and I counted 20 male Baltimore Orioles in one tree one morning. It was just, whoa. But it's just, they're just hanging around. They're saving up energy. They really want to get going further north. And I just saw a question down there and something that I thought I had a slide of, and I didn't. So once the wind shifts later this week, maybe Friday, maybe Saturday, a lot of them, the migrants are going to go further north because they're going to nest a lot further north than just here. And then we're just going to have the locals, if you will. So it's just, it's a migration wave. When the south wind picks up, some of them will leave, some will stick around. Someone was asking about books that I recommend and apps that I recommend. I've got so many of these crazy birding programs, I forget what I have. Several, there's 3 basic field guides that I'm just a strong believer in. Ken Kaufman has one field guide. I can't remember the name of it now. David Sibley has one, and National Geographic has one. Those 3 are outstanding. If you are a beginner, get the Ken Kaufman field guide. Ken is a phenomenal birder. He has this incredible ability to think like a beginner still. And he arranged his field guide differently. It's probably the only field guide where you will see great blue heron and sandhill crane on the same page, because they're phylogenetically very different, but they look very similar. So that's amazing. For birding apps, a lot of people use iBird Pro. I really enjoy the Sibley field guide. Probably the most expensive app I bought from my phone. It's like 25, 30 bucks, I think, when I bought mine. But they've got a wealth of songs. I like David Sibley's illustrations. He's just amazing. Those are two excellent ones. Check your local. I'm always encouraged, buy local if you can, especially on the books. You guys got a lot of bird stores, bookstores, start looking around for them. But those are great. Binoculars, there's a lot of good ones out there. Binoculars are like shoes. You're going to spend some money for a good pair, figure maybe 125 to 300. Go someplace where you can try them on. Go to a Cabela's, a Bass Pro Shop, an Academy or Dick's Sporting, someplace like that. Wolf's Camera in Topeka is another great place where you can start picking up cameras. Look for names like Nikon, Vortex, Kawa. I mean, there's just a lot of good names. I've looked at $500 binoculars. I've looked at $3,000 binoculars, and you can get really good binoculars for that $150 to $200. So, okay, I kind of got off on a tangent there. That's the story of my life.
So
Amy's laughing at me.
Can you talk a little bit about the bird walks? I noticed that you're leading one.
Yeah, there's bird walks. I do one here at Milford Lake, usually the third Saturday morning of every month. Meet at 8 o'clock at the south end of the dam. Topeka Audubon has monthly bird walks. Burroughs Audubon has monthly bird walks. If you're on Facebook, get on the Kansas Birding Facebook page. Also get on the Kansas Ornithological Society Facebook page. A lot of good information in there. If you're more word oriented, I can get you on the Kansas Birding Listserv. Just send me an email and say you want to join. I'll get you on there. But it's great, if there's anybody from down in Wichita Audubon, they do a daily, I think it's a second Saturday of the month, bird walk there at the Wichita Nature Center. And just good place to meet with other birders of all skill levels. I encourage people to bring their kids. I started birding when I was 4, and it's just, bring the kids, get them exposed, get them away from the screens, get them exposed to nature. It's wonderful. It's so important.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? You've got the expert here. So what about feed? What attracts birds?
Oh my gosh. In the wintertime, it's easy. You put out black oil sunflower seed, you put out soot, you put out sunflower seed chips, things like that. Right now, it's very, the hummingbird feeds. Amy wants to know why I'm not in Ohio right now. Yeah, I'd like to know that. I'm going to North Carolina here in a week and a half, but there's a big discussion right now in a lot of circles about feeding orioles and grape jelly. Julie Zickafus has that for a name. Amazing bird artist, had some great insight about a year ago in her blog. And if you send me an email, I'll direct you to that, saying that we probably shouldn't be feeding grape jelly. Oranges, grapefruits are probably fine. They're going to hit the hummingbird feeders no matter what we do. But just a lot of concern over, is grape jelly actually healthy for them? Do I put out a little bit of grape jelly? Yeah, I really ration it, but they sure hit my oranges a lot harder than they do my grape jelly. But hummingbird feeders, man, the hummingbirds are coming through right now. The migrants will move on north by about the first week in June. If you don't have anything coming to your feeder by the second week of June, take it down till the end of July. August and September are hummingbird central. Put up hummingbird feeders in the plural, and just sit back and enjoy them. What good local locations to visit for birding this time of year? I'll get to that in just a minute, Jerry. So there's a lot of stuff out there. If you drop me an email, I can also direct you to another website I have that has about 8 backyard birding guides. It talks about, different kinds of bird feeding you can do and what the birds want. Jerry was asking what good local locations to visit for birding this time of year. For another 10 days or so, we're going to be in the heart of migration. Then it starts to really wane out fast. So get to areas with heavy timber, good trails so you don't get too loaded up with ticks, but get some place where there's a lot of timber, get there early in the morning. Hopefully it's not too windy, and then start going. That might be, there's a lot of, here in Kansas, we've got a lot of good Corps of Engineer properties, state parks. Just look for some place with a lot of timber. I'm not going to name too many names here, but it's just go for the timber, go for the trees, because most warblers are forest species. So that's a good way to go. Or if it's a nice calm morning, get out on the edge of the prairie. We've got Henslow sparrows that are moving in now. They're a breeding species. They're probably going to be on nest here before too long. Things like that. But I just naturally, this time of year, I just go to the woods. I can't help it.
All right. Well, it's 8 o'clock. We sure do appreciate you visiting with us tonight and sharing your wisdom. And thank you for sharing your email address as well.
Absolutely. And you'll be sending out the link to everybody that registered for where they can find it on the YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Good to see so many friendly faces, some I haven't seen for a while. And it's just really enjoyable. And actually to put a few faces with some names I've seen around before too. There's Laura. So good to see you, Laura. But enjoy the birds. If you have questions, just contact me. I'm more than happy to help out.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Have a great evening.